Without doubts, I think it's by far the best league in Europe.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League? Mission accomplished in the Premier League.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the games. We had picked 2 match of the weeks after being away from the Premier League for a while. The first one that we're going to look at, obviously, was one of those in Arsenal versus Tottenham, the London derby. Arsenal wins that one pretty convincingly, I would say. Gally, what did you make of that game? And what do you make of Arsenal? Are they for real?
They are definitely for real as far as the top of the half of the table goes. They are an upper club again in this league. They've earned the right to be back in the argument. They should finish in the top 4 without a problem. They really should. They've proven how to build a squad. That said, I don't think it was as clear-cut. I thought that at 1-1, it could have went either way. Arsenal had the way better of the play, no question. I'm going to stand by it. I think Martinelli absolutely defrauded the match officials by getting the red card on Emerson. I'm going to say it again here. If that was a different Brazilian winger playing for Tottenham, all the people in red on this podcast and all the supporters and all of our chats would be calling Richarlison a dog and saying he goaded this guy and got him sent off with bad antics. It wasn't a red card. It was a borderline yellow card. It was stupid. But there is absolutely no way that should be a red card, and Anthony Taylor did what Anthony Taylor always does. He made himself part of the story. And as the moment he did, the match went off the rails. They scored the 3rd goal, and it's good night the lights. So I'm not sure I know enough how to match that match because I think that game had 2-2 written all over it. I think Spurs would have found a way to level in that second half, and I would have liked to have seen what Arsenal's response would have been. But all credit to Arsenal. They got the call, and then they went and killed off the match, which is all you can ask for a team that's trying to build a winning mentality.
Yeah, because it was going to be interesting to see how Spurs react to that. Because you figured, once like the 60th minute or so hits, they were going to try to attack. And I was kind of almost like looking forward to seeing how Arsenal copes with that, how Spurs go about it, and enter Anthony Taylor. And the thing to me, Bickler, I totally agree with Gally in terms of the player involved makes a huge difference there. You kind of like feed off of your reputation, and he didn't have a history. I feel like now he will, but he didn't have a history. What got to me the most and made me more pissed about the call was he did not just see the tackle and run over there with a red saying we were talking earlier when I was made Chalaba like the dud of the week. I mean, you saw the ref basically running there to show the red because it was a red from a mile away. This was more a red purely based on the reaction of the player, which is the part that got to me the most. And I think Gally is right, where if that reaction is coming from somebody with no reputation, there's no way that's a red. And it was just like, guys, that's Richarlison being Richarlison or something like that. What do you make of that?
I mean, I can't disagree with any of it. I just think it's ridiculous that we have all this technology and we're still getting things wrong like this. Yep. You just can't police the police. You can't. And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I agree with it. I think it's a shame because I think it's 2 really, really good clubs that are at very similar positions in their sort of build, but came from very different approaches, not only tactically, but personnel standpoint, right? I mean, you've got Conte's sort of back 3 that kind of ebbs in and out of a back 5, depending on whether they're sitting back defensively or not. And you've got, Arsenal who's playing more of a traditional back 4. You've got Tottenham, who's got a collection of international superstars and veterans. You've got Arsenal, who's got a little bit of that, but has really relied on a core group of young players that they've really fostered and brought up. So they're kind of at an intersection where I think they're at similar paths, but got there very different ways with very different identities. I think the thing that sticks out to me with Arsenal is when you think of great Arsenal teams, you think about sort of the intricate passing of the Wenger years, where they sort of passed you to death and would sort of dink it around. And there was almost a joke that there was just, they had to touch it 40 times before they put it in the net. But I think the thing that I really enjoy watching this Arsenal team is that they've got some teeth. And I don't remember saying that about an Arsenal team in a long time. Like they can really physically dog you in a way that I haven't seen an Arsenal team do in a long time. And so, yeah, it was a great match. I think they deserved to win. Yeah, it's a shame that we're still talking about Anthony Taylor making decisions that dictate the outcome of games that are close, that should be going down to the wire and letting the players dictate it.
Yeah, in some ways, I think the matchup favors Arsenal overall. And I think that's one thing maybe with Tottenham, Gally, is the fact that they do rely on being able to hit you on the counter a lot. So it's almost like they would rather have the ball so they can like counter on you. And they were trying it several times. And to be fair, I thought Arsenal had like a good answer for every time they, tried it. Going back to preseason, it's that time of year where we give credit to Gally Bickler. I mean, yeah, to Gally. We don't do this a whole lot. I know I don't do this a whole lot on purpose. But Gally, you called us in the preseason video. He's in shock, but hold on, he'll get over it. In the preseason video about when we were talking about Spurs, maybe I remember this wrong now. Hopefully it was you.
Just don't tell your wife, Gally.
And Lloris, and like what's having him in goal for Spurs could be something that they regret in a title run. And he is not a goalie that you can rely on. And I think that rebound, he has done this before. That goal that they conceded reminded me of the goal way back when against Liverpool in the 93rd minute or something like that from a corner kick. Once again, a shot that he should probably stop or at least punch away to where nobody can get to it. He kind of like punches it away towards this player. It just reminded me exact goal. Do you think that's something that's going to keep hurting the Spurs?
I do. And I was me that said it. I've been saying it for a while about Lloris. I think it's going to come back to bite France in the ass at the World Cup too. I think he has a howler in him that will cost France important points, if not a knockout round match. And he's still the captain of France, so he's going to start. And I just feel like he's just at that, there's a period where you can still be a top keeper and not be a keeper at a top club. And I think he's in that point of his career. If you have aspirations to go deep in the Champions League and maybe run down City or Liverpool and be in a title challenge, you can't give up points with goalkeeping mistakes. And I think he's actually is attributed to dropping 4 points already this season for Spurs directly to his mistakes. So I think you will continually see these issues from Lloris. But in classic Tottenham fashion, they didn't go out and get themselves a young keeper to build on. They went out and got Fraser Forster from Southampton. So it's not like he has anyone pushing him in between the sticks. If he had a Kelleher like we have at Liverpool, or you had a young kid like Bazuna, or one of these young keepers, even Sam Johnson that was at West Brom, I think you'd have a young keeper trying to fight his way into the lineup. I don't think Conte's going to do that anyways. Conte likes, old men who are literally as old as the wine he drinks. I think Conte likes a fine French man in between the sticks, and I don't think he's got an issue with it. So he'll deal with the mistakes, but it was a howler to say the least.
Yeah, it's odd for France, who can somehow develop 85 world-class center backs, but not as much in like the goal category. Bickler, before we move on to the other games, having seen Arsenal so far, and obviously with our boys taking them on next week and it being the match of the week, what is the secrets, or what is the best way to approach an Arsenal game and beat Arsenal, you think? Not for Liverpool, I mean for like any team who's taking them on.
I think you got to win the possession battle versus Arsenal. I really do. I think if you allow them to have the possession, you're going to be in a world of trouble. They can counter. They've got the speed to do it. I just think they work better and they operate smoother when they control and dictate the possession. So I think if you can win that in the midfield, I think you've got a shot.
Well, let's take a look at like some of the games, game by game basis real quick. First up, we have the Liverpool 3, Brighton 3, a painful experience for us to all. Gally, probably the biggest thing to see over here was how Brighton would change or would react to the change of manager? Obviously, it's too early, but what do you see from them moving forward?
They look to me to be very much in tune with what the manager was asking them to do tactically. I don't think he changed a lot, which is smart on his part. They were up 2-0 within 15 minutes. They should have been up 4 before we scored. So, you know, Allison made 2-3 great saves in the first half, and they missed an absolute sitter that was maybe the easiest of all their opportunities. They just blatantly missed. I think it was Welbeck with the header. Absolutely has to score and bang that header in. And it's 3-0, and it's good night, the lights. Proud of the boys for coming back, get the 2 goals. Bobby was great. They weren't, you know, wonderful goals. This is where we've gotten to, boys. When I'm screaming at the TV, show me the fucking line, show me the line, because I could see, and I was just waiting for onside, and literally it came on and I screamed out loud. The dog started barking, and Kelly's like, really how the mighty have fallen. And I was like, I know, I'm screaming, fucking doing dances around the living room over fucking VAR overturns. It's ridiculous, but that's where it's gotten to. Shit, I would have taken that own goal as if I fucking scored it all the way from Springfield, Mass.
Yeah, that own goal, I don't know. It would probably been like a tough way to win against Brighton. Walcott played well. For Liverpool, Bickler moving forwards, what does that game tell us? How big of a trouble are they in?
I mean, we're in real trouble. I mean, we've known that, though. I mean, it's an old squad, and we're thin across the board. We got some players coming back. I don't think they're players that make a lot of impact outside of Konate. So I think this is going to be an ongoing issue. I mean, the solution is a tactical change, and we have a manager that doesn't like doing that. So, you know, the depth issues that we were concerned about were not addressed for one reason or another this summer. It's the oldest squad playing the most physically demanding system in the Premier League, and we're seeing the results of that.
Next up, Fulham, Newcastle. My dud, Chalobah was there pretty much the moment that red card came out in the 8th minute. That game was pretty much spoken for. It was a matter of if Newcastle going to get the first goal, and it was going to be over, and it was over. Some good performances by Newcastle there, but obviously when you play for 82 minutes with 10 people, it's kind of hard to keep up with Newcastle. What do you take away from that game, Gally?
I think you just take away from that Fulham still needs things to go their way. They had a great start to the campaign, but they're going to need to accumulate points, and you don't do that by picking up red cards at home, right, in the 8th minute of matches. Also, Newcastle is absolutely toothless as soon as Mitrovic isn't on the pitch, as anyone saw after 26 minutes. You know, I picked him up on my fantasy team, which automatically means he will fail, which is what he did. And I assumed that he just got sacrificed. And then I looked and saw, oh, no, even worse. He came off injured, which is a classic maneuver. And just in time, he got a yellow card before he could go get sent off or get taken off. But I think what you see is I think you're seeing that Eddie Howe is putting his stamp on this Newcastle side. They're playing better defensively, whether it's against 10 men or against 11. And they're starting to create goals in different areas of the pitch. And I think, you know, Almiron has been a player that the Newcastle supporters love because of his work rate. And all they've ever said is if he could just give us a little end product. I think he's got 5 goals in all competitions and like 3 assists this year. And he's creating that end product. And he's showing that it was a really, really smart buy for Newcastle. And I think it's working out for them very, very well. And I think Newcastle supporters should be really, really excited. I think they have a really, really fun next 6 to 8 months in front of them.
Will those fun months result in a top 6 finish, you think, Bickler?
I don't think so. I think there's too many teams in front of them still. But here's the thing about Newcastle, right? And speaking of fantasy, very disappointed they didn't hold on the clean sheet. I don't know what's going on there, but especially with that defense, he's only conceded 8 times this year. So, I mean, pretty phenomenal. Like, so here's my thing, right? We know Eddie Howe is great going forward. I am so impressed with the managerial job he's done in general. They look so tight at the back. They look great in the midfield. I mean, a lot of that's Guimaraes, who is, I think, a world-class talent. And we talked about, like, when there is an ownership change, we all kind of had this idea that they were just going to start bringing in dudes, paying $120 million for players, overpaying wages. And you know what? They haven't. They got real quality on smart buys, and they're playing with, like, across the, like, outside of a few pieces like Trippier, Guimaraes, and Wilson, who they already have. For the most part, you're talking about sort of like what would be considered mid-range talent across the board playing world-class football right now. So, like, I'm like huge on what's happening over there from a footballing standpoint. If you're a Newcastle fan, this has got to be the best you've felt in decades. And I think this is great for the Premier League to have them back in this capacity. It's not great for all the challengers, but I mean, it's been fun to watch, man. Long live Newcastle football, because this has been fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've gone, you know, like you said, we expected a spending spree, and we've seen a lot of teams do that, right? Throw a lot of money around and not go anywhere with it. So, I mean, you've seen how much money United has spent, how much money Everton has spent. I mean, like a team like Everton has spent all that money and fought relegation, for God's sakes. So they've been patient. I think they're going about it right, and they're basically getting the right people, regardless of the price kind of deal. But I agree. I think it's still too early for them for the top six, with a couple of teams that are kind of almost like a head start in terms of squad. Next up, Southampton 1, Everton 2. Bickler, we'll start with you on this one. Obviously a huge win for Everton. What do you make of Southampton's situation overall?
I mean, they're just like so Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, they'll come out and they'll win a game they've got no business being in, like for somebody in the top 5 randomly, and then they'll turn around and play Villa and get beat by 7 goals. Like, I mean, it just, you never know what you're going to get from them. This is scraping Everton off the bottom, which Everton, like, surprisingly defensively has been insane this year. They've only allowed 7 goals this year. Yeah. So if they can ever find a way to put the ball in the back of the net, because I mean, going into this game, they'd only scored, like, I think it was like 4 goals this season or 5 goals this season. So, like, if they can figure out a way to score, they'll be all right. But, like, yeah, Southampton is just a weird one. You never, ever know what you're going to get with them. And they've got, like, if you look at their lineup, there is no reason, like, this lineup that I look at with Southampton, the lineup from a talent standpoint and the pieces they have, they're super, super good young goalkeeper. They've got some very talented center backs. One that we were almost transferred into Liverpool at one point. Ward-Prowse, Maitland-Niles, who I think is a talent. Like, when you look at the talent, this is the flip side of Newcastle. Like, this could be the new, like, when you look at that talent, it's basically what Newcastle has. But, like, the performances are on opposite ends of the spectrum, where, like, Newcastle is finding this really, really nice, consistent balance across the board and really growing as a squad. And then Southampton, for whatever reason, just looks so disjointed. You just never know what you're going to get.
And I agree with that. Does that fall on the manager then, Gally, when a team is somehow, like, really geared up and ready to play against City and Liverpool, but not as much at home against Everton, where it's like more of like a possibly a focus issue? Because I think, yeah, if you look at the lineups, I agree with Bickler that I think Southampton had the better lineup, but definitely not as much as the same play. And I guess the follow-up question to that is, do you see them fighting for relegation with that inconsistency? Is it going to be one of those teams that fights it down there?
Yeah, so I had picked them to be relegated or be right around the relegation battle. So when they started off playing a little better, and they did make some really smart buys. The Aribo kid's a good buy. They bought a couple. I mean, they basically bought like 3 graduated youth players from City. They were like, well, Liverpool buys all of our players and turns them into world-class players, so we're going to start buying the players at the big clubs and hope we turn them into class players here. And it clearly is working for them a little. I don't know if it's as much this match. I don't know if it's as much down to what Southampton didn't do to what Everton did. And I think, albeit for us Liverpool supporters to throw any support their way, but I think there has to be a little bit here for Frank Lampard. Paul mentioned it. I mean, don't. You have to. They're on even points with us right now. And if it wasn't for a 9-0 beating of Bournemouth, we'd be not only below them in points in the table, we'd actually be below them in goal difference too. They are dead even at 0. They've scored 7, conceded 7. So he is doing something right, setting them up in a position, knowing what he has for talent to acquire points. I'll tell you this right now. I don't expect Everton to be at the bottom of the table come the end of the season fighting that relegation battle, because I think what Lampard is showing right now is that he went out and bought EPL level center backs in Cody, Tarkowski. He doesn't play the Minas and all the people that they want him to play and the Godfreys and all that. He got his guys. He's creating a defensive stability. Pickford keeps them in games as much as we hate the bastard. And if they get anything, I mean, they did this without Gordon. If they get anything out of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Gray, and Mopai up front as their kind of front three scoring goals, they're going to stay up and finish right where Everton always does, but somewhere between 13th and 9th in this table. I'm starting to see them as that in this table. So I think he deserves some credit for that, seeing to the fact that we had the guy buried last year and fired before the World Cup to start this year. Got to give credit where it's due.
See him buried and fired, but I have to agree, unfortunately. But yeah, I would not still mind them buried and fired is a good way to go for Lampard. Next up, Crystal Palace 1, Chelsea 2. The biggest talking point to me, and I don't know if you saw this, Bickler, the Thiago Silva diving save of a counter that could have possibly made the game 2-0. And that game kind of like turns around after that. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, but that's football, right? I mean, it turns on a dime. And so that's the difference. And that's why, like, I mean, having referees intervene in matches is such a critical thing, because so many of those little things dictate the ebb and flow of games and can change momentums and stuff. But yeah, the game looks completely different 2-0 than it does 1-0, right? And so, I mean, credit for Chelsea hanging in there. I think they're starting to figure some things out a little bit. I still think Chelsea is a tough out. I mean, it's just another one of those things. Kai Havertz
was it a red for you?
Was it a red? I don't think so. Not for me. I don't think so. I mean, what do you guys think? Did you think it was a straight red?
See, I don't know if it's by the rule or whatever, but if that's the rule, then the rule should be changed and that should be a red. Because to me, that is no different than yanking somebody when they're about to go one-on-one or slide tackling a guy going by himself. Because if he doesn't grab that ball back, he's one-on-one. So how is it any different than him pulling a guy down as he's going on goal? What do you think, Alex?
I personally thought, I agreed. I think it was Robbie Musto. One of the two Robbies was 100% it's a red card all day long. Has to be a red. And I think it must have been Robbie Musto because he was the center back. And he was like, it's a red. You're on the ground. If I grabbed his leg and pulled him down, it's a red card. If I grabbed the ball and the alternate option was one-on-one with the keeper, it's a red card. Like, to me, it was a red card. Because it wasn't called on the field as a red card with this bullshit VAR overviewing rules thing, it was never going to get changed. So I'm not going to play the conspiracy idea, because it's not like they showed red and then said, oh, no, we decided this isn't a red card. So I'm okay with it. To me, this is just a classic example of everything that's beautiful and terrible about football all at once. No, they literally sung his goddamn name as he walked on the pitch, as Conor Gallagher got subbed on in the 65th minute. They sang it from every angle. He admitted he had more goosebumps listening to them sing his name than like his first start at Stamford Bridge. And then the son of a bitch scores the goal in the 90th minute. And there's a picture of this kid just bawling. And my mind was like, if I were that kid, I'd be ripping up that fucking sign asking for that jersey. I'd be asking for a new Sharpie, and it would be like, Gallagher, you stink. But, I mean, seriously, and it was everything that football is. Like, those two moments, watching him be overwhelmed as he walked on the pitch and then watching all of them shudder. But I'll say this, it's great about Palace. It's great what they're doing. Look at Vieira. They got 6 points, and I know they got one extra game in hand, but that's against Brighton, a team that's probably better than them and can take points. Palace needs to figure out once again who's going to score them goals other than Zaha. Because other than a great run of form, they themselves could find themselves down towards the bottom of that table too. I think what I'm seeing as we look at these matches is there is some serious mediocrity in this division. And we could be in for one of the great relegation battles of all time. Because there could be 8-9 teams. And as long as one of them isn't red with this emblem anywhere near it, yeah, I can't wait for the theater and the drama.
Yeah, Crystal Palace has been one of those teams that kind of is in every game, but just can't finish it. And yeah, they, like I say, I like how they play, but you're right. They just got to be able to string the results together. So next one up is Bournemouth 0, Brentford 0. Bickler, is this like a point gain for everybody, or just put it in the pocket towards the end of the season for both teams?
I mean, these are, I think if you're Brentford, these are points you got to have. I mean, you got to be real disappointed that you can't get on the board with as much prolific firepower as that squad has. So the whole country of Denmark should be disappointed. And like back to the drawing board.
Well, I mean, I think a third of the country is actually on the payroll.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and like credit to Bournemouth, right? I mean, they did the opposite of Nottingham Forest, where they actually actively got worse in the transfer market, and they're ahead of them on the table. It makes absolutely no sense, but I mean, that's football, right? So yeah, points dropped for Brentford, 0.1 for Bournemouth.
Yeah, going into this game, I had Brentford winning it and freaking Tony scoring a couple of goals, actually, and that didn't pan out that way. For Bournemouth, though, I mean, obviously the new manager, your favorite guy of all time, has left, Galley. New manager, so it's important to kind of like get any point that you can at this stage. Still having a lot of trouble, obviously, scoring goals. Do you think that's just gonna be something that wears off on this team unless they do something drastic in January? The new manager smell once it wears off.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not like they've hit the ground running and they're getting wins. I mean, they got 3 draws. Let's not make it out like they've been, ripping up trees here. They've picked up draws. They're not losses. So I think you have to feel good about the fact that you're on a consistent basis. The thing they should feel the best about is they're playing an absolute different formation with different players. Like, he's playing the striker they got out of Celtic, the Christie kid. Like, he's playing Solanke through the middle as a true number 9 and then playing another center forward off of him. They're actually playing a different system. And I think it's setting them up in a way to be competitive. They just deserve a ton of credit, in my opinion. I mean, I'm looking at them here. They're 13th in the table on 9 points. They have a minus 13 goal differential, which you're like, well, why are you giving them credit, Kelly? They lost a match 9-0. Like, you lose a match 9-0. I think the fact that they are where they are in the table, do I still expect them to get relegated? I do. But I think right now they're going to be a tough out for people because they've decided we're just going to sit back and we're going to play for draws and hopefully we'll nick one somewhere along the way and find our own way. But they're going to get their points because there's a lot of mediocre teams in this division.
I think it's going to get challenging for them as they play better teams. I think the point taken from Newcastle was a crucial one for them away. This one is more like you almost have to get 3 points at some point from your home games unless, but I agree. I think it's going to be one of those teams that's going to be in trouble. I mean, they beaten Nottingham Forest away, and we talked about Nottingham Forest earlier in the show about where they're at right now. But from one of your favorite guys in Parker, let's go to one of Bickler's favorite guys in for West Ham. Your boy scores, is involved. What do you make of West Ham as a win? Are they on the right track back, or it was just because of Wolves, which we'll get to next with their obviously change in manager?
Jared Bowen, always rated him. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, so I think if you're West Ham, the 2 people that you wanted absolutely to get on the board for you got on the board. Yeah. And your new striker, and your old star of yesteryear. So, I mean, I think that's best case scenario. Bowen, tough as nails, bangs one in. Dude, he had a finger bending the wrong direction second half, and they just like basically snapped it back, taped it back together, gave him a little pat on the butt and trotted him back out there. So, yeah, I think that's the best case scenario for West Ham. I'm not – look, like this isn't the same Wolves team, so I'm not like going to say that they're as stout defensively. So I'm not convinced this West Ham team should be producing a lot more goals. Yeah. So I think the jury is still out on what's going on there. I think more that this is a case of playing a very weakened Wolves side defensively in terms of what we're used to seeing from them. And then not only weekend Wolves side, but this is a Wolves side, and we can talk about this going into the manager decision to let Lynch go, Bruno Lynch. But this is a Wolves side that for like 18 months is by far the lowest XG expected goal ratio in the entire Premier League, and it's been going on for almost 2 full seasons now. So they're not scoring. They don't even look like scoring. So I think that probably led to the decision, and they're going to have to, like we talk about how there's a lot of mediocrity in the Premier League this year. They're going to be a candidate for the drop unless they can figure some things out pretty quickly here.
And that's what I was going to ask you, Gally. I mean, obviously, okay, so Bruno is gone. How much of it was on Bruno, you think? Or is Wolves doing that thing where they're like, well, I'm sure, is it more of a case where they said, you know what, this is not going well, let's make a freaking change now? I expect a lot of the teams, I kind of did not expect this to happen so soon. I thought it would happen before the World Cup. I think a lot of teams that will make manager changes would make it before the World Cup and give, how they normally do it before international breaks. This is like a really long international break with the World Cup. Are you shocked that they pulled the trigger? And how much of it is really on Bruno, you think?
I'm not shocked they pulled the trigger. What's crazy is they've only conceded 9 goals, so you wouldn't chalk that up to like a bad defensive record. But when you've only scored 3, it feels like you give up even more, because basically the moment they give up a goal, they're going to lose. Like they're the type of side that's never coming back to win a match. And, to Paul's point, the stats really started to go downhill. You can almost trace them back to Jimenez's head exploding off of Luiz's head. It honestly almost all goes and coincides with it, because at that point they were so reliant. They had already lost Jota, and the only thing they still had Jimenez. And then they had, Crazy Traore creating things on one wing. You had Podence that was supposed to be this young, diminutive little player that's going to create. Never did any of it, right? They're still trotting out Moutinho and Neves up until this season at times. So I honestly think this firing has more to do with the fact that they believe that they have the talent on their roster with the right manager to stay up. And they wanted to give that manager the time it would take to actually try to pull it together. I mean, but they've had a bad run of injuries too. I mean, they literally sign players and they get hurt. Like they've signed 3 strikers in the last year, and all 3 of them have gotten hurt.
It's the goddamn pens that they're signing the contracts with. But yeah, I was shocked that they pulled the trigger. This sort of, like I say, I figured like they would give it to October. But yeah, I guess, if you're going to make a change, I can see why they did the change. I just don't know how much of it was on Bruno, the way this squad is made up right now. And like you're saying with the injuries, I know what's going to change. And the best thing for me was Diego Costa celebrating something just to find out that VAR
is. This could get really fun though. I mean, I think I would like to see one of 2 scenarios. Either they hire a non-Portuguese speaking manager, which I think would just be absolutely hilarious, or they announce a surprise hire of Cristiano Ronaldo as head coach.
That would be outstanding, actually, if Ronaldo took player manager and then literally just walked off the pitch as soon as he subbed himself out, like just went down the tunnel, just takes off. They're like, where's he going? He's like, he's got a tea time. But I'll tell you this. I was joking with someone over the weekend, and I was like, could you imagine the drama that would happen if Mourinho ever walked away from Roma and walked into Wolves and was like, I take over Portugal. I claim Portugal mine, and just like start slamming it down. The other idea, there might be some truth to the idea that Pochettino started learning Portuguese.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. I mean, you almost have to. I don't think I do want him to bring somebody just totally off random, like bring a German dude over there and just.
But no wonder like Ruben Neves is like pining for a move. They start him at center back.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. He lost it there, but honestly, that guy was Benfica's number 2 manager. He was Benfica 2 when he got this job. There were a lot of questions that he wasn't the right guy to replace Nuno. And I just think that Nuno was something that was lightning in a bottle. He hit them at a period and it really fell apart, and they knew it and he knew it, and it wasn't going to work well for the next manager. And I think this next guy in probably has a shot as long as he can speak Portuguese.
I have a name for you guys. And if this happens, maybe I should go place this bet now, because I don't know, God knows what the heck name odd is, but Vitor Pereira.
Oh,
Vitor Pereira, who used to manage Fenerbahce for like 2 separate occasions. I honestly think he's like a really good coach. He is Portuguese, so fits 80% of the requirement right there. And he was at one point rumored with Everton to take over last year, I believe. So put that name, clip this, because I can see that happening.
The English papers, and God willing, like from like their mouths to God's ears, or whoever you believe in, the English papers say there's already been an interview. They know they're in a relegation battle, and they are going to the well with exactly what we want. Can you imagine when the douche walks into that dressing room and says, no more Portuguese, no more?
But that's the thing, is
next manager.
Wolves, like the only way that Wolves can like not be like Portuguese country of designation is like if they get relegated and have to lose, like they have to, because they wouldn't be able to pay all these internationals anyway. So it's like the only way that like you free yourself from Portugal is if you get relegated.
I just imagine him walking in there first day, red face, shaved head, grunting and gargling at people, just looking around the room, telling people, beautiful football. Nah, we kick people. Like, God, just literally going,
because we haven't played.
It would be
yet.
amazing.
I don't want more injuries for Liverpool. Sean Dyche, or Sean Douche, as I like to call him. Let's hope
you watch.
Moving forward, Leeds United 0, Villa 0. I know United was, I mean, Leeds was down a man the entire half, but this was a game Villa should have probably won. They pretty much dominated for the most part in chances and possession. Should Leeds be happy to walk away with 1 point, Gally?
Sure. They played with 10 men for what, 40 minutes, I think it was, the second half.
Almost entire second half.
Absolute brain fart of a move. And how you can pick up a second yellow for blocking a direct free kick, like stopping someone from taking a free kick. It's just, I don't even know what the fine should be for it, but it should be a lot of money. And Sinister, or whatever the hell his name is, probably shouldn't be able to afford it, whatever it does cost. But they had opportunities to score 2. Rodrigo should have scored 1 early in that second half when they were still playing at equal side. They should be happy to get a point, but once again, I'm sorry. Villa's inept. They have no tactical awareness. They just defend. They play centrally. They don't do anything to create. Coutinho just, there's no rhyme or reason to the 11 that he starts. It just doesn't make any sense to me. 1 week they play 2 strikers. 1 week they play 1 up top. Other weeks they play with a front 3. Just feels like it's always changing. And the only thing that's consistent with Villa is Jacob Ramsey looks too good for the rest of the players in his side.
Yeah, he's a player. So
another player that's been linked with Liverpool who we didn't buy.
Yeah,
okay, let's not.
Don't worry though. Stevie's going to send
the salt away. Put the salt away. Let's not rub into wounds. Let's talk about.
It's fine. We don't need a midfielder
before we move on to the next game. So Villa, Real quick, Bickler, like, where do you see them moving forward? We talked about a preseason, and we got a lot of flack on it online, that's for sure. That, Gerard had a huge task to kind of figure out things, and seems like he still has not, and he still does not know an ideal 11, if you will.
Yeah, we got a lot of shit about us not knowing what we were talking about, but I don't see one single thing that we said during that hasn't panned out yet. So that's pretty interesting. And we're right where we thought we might be. So with them struggling to score goals, set up pretty defensively and looking pretty disjointed. Now, granted, Coutinho almost scored a banger, but like, I think this game was interesting because I think it's a tale of two teams. Like, I think Leeds has pretty much overperformed their mean, in my opinion, and I think that Villa is massively underperforming. So the fact that it's kind of like landed 0-0 seems right to me. Yeah, they've got a lot to figure out, man. Like this team, when you look at the actual talent on there between McGinn and Ramsey in the mids, anchored by Luiz with Watkins, Bale, and Coutinho up front, like that's a team that should be shredding people. Yeah. Like just on pace alone, and like Watkins has the ability to be prolific when he's firing. Coutinho like is a bargain and a real playmaker for them. We know McGinn's got some teeth in him and he can really hit it from range. Ramsey's arguably one of the youngest, brightest talents in England. Like there's no way that this team should be as unenjoyable to watch as they are. And that's what they are to watch. They're not fun to watch. And that's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, just right there. I mean, you count so much talent that should be producing a lot more than freaking 6 goals in 8 games. And I think that's like shocking. I think he's still trying to figure out the combination there. And let's hope he does it before it's too late. Last game before we sandwich with the other match of the week over here is today's game with Leicester City just smashing Forest. Just from the get-go. I know Forrest had that opportunity to score while it was still 0-0 and hit the post. But really, as you look at this game, Gally, it was not even close in terms of like intensity, aggression. I hate to, just use that, oh, they wanted it more kind of thing. But it really felt like Leicester was out there to prove a point. And Forrest had no idea what their point was.
So we all poke fun, I know you guys in the mornings on our, cup of coffee or tea shows that we do, you and Maka, we like to poke fun at Brendan Rodgers and talk about when will he get fired, and we make fun of his teeth and that he can't coach defense. And wow, it sounds like we really do like having fun with him, don't we?
Yeah, we slam him a lot.
We really do. We really do. The truth is he deserves all of it. Because he's kind of a character and a ridiculous like cartoon character of himself. Today, what it looked like to me was there were 11 men that were ready to fight as hard as they could to make sure he's still the manager tomorrow. So, like, if their board needed to know whether or not the players at Leicester still cared about the manager, I think they do, because they came out, held the leather today. That's the best they played defensively all year. Part of it was playing a disjointed Forest team. But I think that Madison is coming into some top form. Obviously, Vardy is Vardy and does what he does. If they can get Daka scoring goals, and I do think Harvey Barnes being healthy changes their dynamic because he offers pace and power on the right-hand side that they really need because they hit people on the counter. If they, you look at the table, they're sitting on 4 points. It was easy to poke fun of them. I think you give Leicester a month. We'll get to the World Cup. Leicester won't be anywhere near the relegation zone, and I don't think they'll be anywhere back there by the end of the season. That team can score goals. They're going to concede them, but they're going to make purchases in January to strengthen their side. And they have more talent than those teams at the bottom of the table for me.
Of course, the players could be playing Bickler so that Rodgers doesn't get cans and a new guy come in and make him play defense or something like that. And they did play against Forest. I guess let's talk about Forest a little bit. Because Leicester, I don't know, it's still a mystery to me. There's a lot of talents over there, but not to bashing on Brendan Rodgers. I don't think they will get relegated. They have way too much talent to be in that battle for long. But I don't know if they're ever going to be like the team they were, like the beginning of the seasons, the last couple of years. But let's get at Forest. How bad of a trouble are they in, and is it pretty much a done deal for them at this rate? Go back to championship.
I mean, it's not a done deal. I mean, it's a long season. There's plenty of teams in front of them, but I mean,
I guess my question is, do you see anything that would give you hope as a Forest fan right now, aside from like, you know, there's other 20 guys you can try that you signed? Is there anything you see there? They're like,
yeah, I think the silver lining is probably the sheer amount of available options. The con to that is, do you have the manager that is knowledgeable enough to evaluate all of that change and put it together in time? You know, I think that's the problem, is like when you have that many options and you have made as many changes as you have, finding the baseline in which to tweak things, like to find that like that sort of floor that you can build off of, is really hard, because they don't even know what the floor is for that team right now. They've made so many changes. And that's, I mean, you're looking at 8 weeks in and you have a negative 15 goal differential. Like that's, I mean, it's pretty rough. And like, I just think the fact of the matter is that there's so many changes there. You don't even know really what your floor is. And I think that it's just, this is just, we talked about it preseason. We talk about how you approach the window going into the Premier League when you're promoted, right? And Bournemouth did nothing. Nottingham Forest did everything. I don't agree with either of those. I think that you have to take what brought you success in one league and try to build on the quality of that into the next league. And I think that's the thing that makes the most sense. They didn't seem to do that. The system looks different. The players look different. And I don't know if Cooper's got enough available resources and actual quality smarts to sift through that much material in the condensed window in time to make changes.
And I think that's another difference, you know, like going back to what Gally is saying, you know, like with Leicester City, I think Leicester City is going into like a run of fixtures where, you know, they can put a lot of points together pretty fast, especially with their firepower. And if you look at Forest fixtures, they got a lot of tough ones coming up. You know, they got to go to Brighton. You know, they're going to play Villa home. Then they go to Wolves, who now have a new manager. So you would think you got that, like we were talking earlier, the new manager smell and like things slightly improving. Then they go to Brighton, Liverpool, Arsenal. It just gets more difficult for them. Whereas, you know, on the flip side, obviously Leicester City's fixtures are getting easier. Well, on paper, at least, there's no easy games. But so let's get to our second match of the week, which will wrap it up for the week for us. The Manchester Derby. My brother, who is a United fan, pretty much told me, I mean, this game, when I first woke up, it was 1-0. And then by the time I freaking like got ready to turn on, it was suddenly 4-0. I went back and watched afterwards because my brother was like, you got to watch this. And what he was telling me was, before I was able to turn it on, he said, if this was a scrimmage, the manager would have stopped it, because one team is not getting anything out of this right now. The teams are way too unbalanced. Gally, is it a matter of City being that good, or is it United being too brave for their own good and trying to go at City without really having the tools to be able to do it? Because we talked about this in the past in this show, you know, in our regular podcast, in terms of, you know, how to go at City. Do you sit back and let them pick you apart, or do you attack them? And not a lot of teams have the tools and the ability to attack him. Did Ten Hag kind of like overvalue what he had and kind of opened up the door for City to tear him apart?
Yeah, he definitely did. I mean, I don't think he had much choice. I mean, he genuinely tried to trot out a team that he thought would be able to do the job. You know, the Casemiro thing has got to be a conundrum right now. I mean, you spend almost $70 million on this guy and he hasn't started a match for you yet. You're playing a team as big as City. This is supposed to be why you go and buy a big-time defensive stalwart midfielder to help anchor your midfield and sit in front of your defense, and he doesn't get the start. Like, I genuinely thought coming out of this international break he'd get the start. I would love to sit here and bash United in my time to talk about this match. But the truth is, I don't know what they were supposed to do, because if City is firing like that, where the team is playing that well between De Bruyne and Silva and Rodri, and Grealish and Foden. And I mean, and the beast in the middle. I don't know what else you can really do. That almost looked like a perfect performance. The first half was absolutely perfection. And I'll say this. I know the announcers were just trying to figure out something to talk about. And one of them was like, is it ridiculous for me to say that I think Akanji should be the man of the match, even though Haaland got that we have two guys with hat tricks? But they were arguing that he was literally the best player on the field for the first half. And he was amazing. And, you know, Ake, to his credit, had a great match in center defense. They played well together. You know, Walker gets hurt. And the left back that is supposed to be this toss-away kid that they signed, Gomez, comes in and then plays great and gets the assist on Haaland's hat trick. You know, Paul said it earlier today. We can make fun of City for the spending, the money, you know, 800 million on fullbacks, right? What we can't do is when they see a need, they find a need, they fill it, they find the guy, they bet him in, and he starts a week later. He plays right away. He fits right in, and he adds right in. And they were special. That was one of the best performances I've seen a team play for the 85 minutes, to your point, until the line change came and they gave up the 2 goals. That's as good as I've seen anybody play. And I say right now, if these guys don't want to, they won't drop any more points. Like, literally, if they really don't want to, they could win every game the rest of the way in the Premier League. Maybe a couple draws. Like, I think they're that good. Like, I think this is by far the best City team that we've seen the entire time. And that is really, really scary to say.
I think that while I agree, I mean, yeah, City was just ridiculous. Like I say, it was kind of like painful to watch as a rival. But, I mean, you got to admire what they're doing as a fan of the sport. But at the same time, I felt, I mean, 2 things that stuck out me is United is nowhere near to go at City. They had to kind of eat the humble pie, sit back, and see if they can do something on the counter. And they really did not do that. And I think that kind of like, and when they did try to do it, it was kind of like too late. And I think that's what made the center backs look so good and more comfortable. And especially when you had a brand new center back, I thought it would be a lot more dangerous to try to hit him on the counter because they have the players for that. But I think Ten Hag was too brave. And the second thing I noticed is, you know, Martinez, you know, we kind of make fun of it, you know, the midget center back. It kind of showed that when he goes against a big player, he will struggle in the Premier League, especially if that player has pace, because you could see him. Even when he knew where the ball was going to go, he could not cope with Haaland and, you know, could stop him once he got there. What do you make of that, Bickler, in terms of, you know, what does it say about United? Obviously, we're going to give a lot of credit to City, but what did this tell us about United?
I mean, my biggest takeaway, Gally kind of hit on it, because, like, I think if I wasn't, like, busy just trying to, like, swallow how fucking good City was, I was getting a lot of enjoyment out of them panning to Casemiro and Ronaldo together on the same bench, thinking like, hey, remember when we were at Real Madrid winning everything, playing football? Like, now we're in Madrid with this leaky ass stadium, fucking watching get destroyed by 6 goals. So once I got done thoroughly enjoying that, I mean, God, dude, we talked about this. It's like you got to pick your poison for City, right? I mean, was it the right? It's easy for us to look hindsight and be like, yeah, it was probably stupid to try to go after City. I think, to your point about Lisandro, I think that, I mean, is he going to be vulnerable in certain matchups? Yeah, but I think Haaland is just going to get the better of 90% of these matchups just because he's absolutely a physical freak. Just a freakish.
But let's say a center back, like a center forward, like let's say Mitrovic. If they might not have the pace, but somebody who has the size, or Antonio, or like, you know, somebody like that.
True. Yeah, I just think I think with Haaland, like, you're either going to choose, he's just going to outmuscle you or he's going to outpace you. He's got both in his locker, and that's almost impossible to deal with. Yeah, so I mean, Lisandro's at a specifically disadvantage, but what you get with Lisandro is you can attack teams and push him all the way up, and he does have the pace to get back. So, I mean, you've at least got that with him. I mean, He seems
He
to
hasn't
make
been
up
bad.
for his deficiency. He does make up with his deficiencies too. He's actually really good in the air for how his size. So
for size,
I mean,
yeah. But I mean, I felt like, when you look at that pairing in the long run, if you do play a high line, it can pay off with his pace because he can get back there in time. But and maybe perhaps that's why they were going at City Galley, because they didn't want to sit back and try to absorb it with that. But that's what makes the whole lack of Casemiro there a big question mark to me, because I would have thought, I mean, it's not only hindsight. I mean, if I'm a United fan, and,
you would, if you're playing two holding,
there's no way I'm going at him. I would rather take my chances sitting back and see if I can hit him on the counter. Even when they play Liverpool in the past, they have kind of like sat back and tried to hit us on the counter, knowing they cannot match us. So for them to be that brave, I know Tenai was trying to instill a new thing. I just found it shocking that because it was stupid brave, if you will.
See, I watched it. I don't know. I didn't see them that on the front foot. Like they put 11 behind the ball and try to hit on the counter? No, but I didn't see them that expansive or that playing that much at them. I just don't think that they had no bite when they got the ball. But this all goes back to improperly constructing of the United side. Like this all comes back to having Bruno Fernandes on the pitch and not playing through him to his strengths. I mean, he looks like a shell of the guy who showed up there in January and was the best player in the Premier League from that January until the end of the campaign. So for me, it all comes back to them not really having it. Rashford still doesn't look there and at it. And, I'm not a big fan of Varane, and I don't think Varane's that great of a center back. So this whole Martinez-Varane partnership, I don't think works. Don't get me wrong, Maguire is no better. And they brought in Lindelof, and as soon as they did, that's
not an option. Yeah.
They brought in Lindelof, and literally that was when Holland was like I actually thought like it was like Beetlejuice, and it was that scene where like the friggin' like his hat goes and like the fucking big top happens, because you could actually like see Holland, how excited he was when he saw Lindelof was coming on. Like that's what must happen when like a Norwegian man sees a slow Swedish statue show up, and he's like, ha, 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 I know what I'm doing to you today.
And that was the thing. I mean, the way City played, it was going to be hard to do anything against them. They were on their game, and when they're on it, they're almost impossible to stop. I just felt like they had like zero shape. I mean, when I say go at them, I mean they had like zero defensive shape. I feel like your best bet against them was kind of like sitting back and hoping to hit them on the counter, packing some defensive midfielders, and like play D, and hopefully like Rashford or somebody like that on the counter, like hit something. But let's go back to City, and then we talked about Arsenal earlier. So these were like the two matches of the week. I'm going to come to you guys real quick. Gally, we'll start with you. Does Arsenal have a shot at taking City on for the long haul for the title race?
0.0.0.0.0. I'm going to do as many points and zeros as possible because there is no chance. This thing is done and dusted. And I'm going to tell you right now, City wins this thing by 10 points.
How about you, Bickler?
I can't disagree with any of that. I don't see anyone that even looks like they're in the same league as City right now. I mean, they're just so head and shoulders above everybody. And the scary thing about it is like their second team is like leagues above anybody else right now.
Calvin
Phillips I think that's probably the biggest
playing.
The biggest difference is they have the depth to be able to keep going. I just don't see Arsenal having the same depth, but it's a long season. But yeah, I mean, just looking at these weekend's games, and you would think, we watched Arsenal beat Tottenham, and obviously, like the London Derby and the Manchester Derby, but just because of the performances and stuff, I think you can kind of see City is in a class of their own at the moment. Well, as with every week, let's pick our studs of the week. Bickler, let's start with you on this one. Who was your stud?
Such an obvious one. Like Holland was absolutely a monster, just at the heart of everything good for them. Foden had a good game in that match too, but I think everything just sort of seemed to run through Holland. He's on pace for almost 70 goals this year. To smash all the records. He's a hat trick of hat tricks at home. It's just absolutely insane what he's doing. I think the big question still is, we didn't ever question the quality, right? We questioned the durability. He's averaging missing one game every 3. So let's see how he holds up, and let's hope for the rest of the league he doesn't, because right now he is just an absolute man monster.
It is pretty scary, and it didn't look like they were too bothered with, or Pep is too bothered with his durability, because he did not even come off in that game. They did a line change, and he stayed out there even after the hat trick. But yeah, quite the performance. So a very worthy stud there. Gally, who is your stud for the week?
My stud of the week actually came this afternoon. It's James Madison. He did everything right in that Leicester match today. 2 goals and an assist. And honestly, it's not just his fantasy numbers that jump out on the page, but it was his overall play. He was head and shoulders the best player on the pitch. There's been talk about him, wanting a move away from Leicester to a bigger club. Some talked about Spurs. There's been talk about United at times, Newcastle over the summer. But I really believe if I'm James Madison, I'm licking my chops at their run of fixtures, and I'm trying to do everything I can to try to get myself into Southgate's plans for that last spot or 2 on that flight to Qatar. I don't think he'll make it, but he was my stud of the week this week for sure.
I kind of went there. Holland was obviously a good choice, and I was kind of looking at him. Foden is another one, but heck, I was like, let's go with the whole goddamn team. Manchester City. Watching that game, and, regular listeners of the podcast and the show know my brother is actually a United fan. Don't ask me why. And even he was saying it's kind of hard not to watch City in admiration and really enjoy. It's kind of hard as a rival, but as a fan of the sports, you just watch that team in action and you kind of like in awe in terms of how well they function. Take away the last 10 minutes or so when they did that line change, perhaps, and the game was kind of like put away. The entire performance, how they control the game, it's their game, and United just happened to be playing along with them. It felt like throughout the game, they slowed it down when they wanted to. They got going when they wanted to. They almost like lull you for a little second and then just like slap you in the face with like a through pass. And so many people on that team, especially in their midfields, heck, their backs, everybody feels like they can create. So it's never like a player has the ball on their feet and you're like, okay, he's going to pass it along. Anybody can create something at any given time, but they lull you to sleep with their ball movements and eventually kind of hit you. It's somehow painful to watch as a rival, but you got to admire it. And kind of like, as a fan of the sports, you got to kind of enjoy it. And they were definitely my stud of the week. Sorry, United fans. The dud of the week. So many duds, so little time. Gally, let's start with you on this one. Who was your dud?
Yeah, so my dud of the week is actually going to go to a collective group, and it's the Nottingham Forest Board of Directors. And I'll even circle it in on the big Greek himself, Evangelos Marinakis, and I'll apologize to all the Greeks listening right now.
That was actually pretty good
of his name.
Yeah, it was nice.
It wasn't actually that far off, right? Yeah. Truth be told, 21 signings. You come up from the league, and everyone wanted to herald them as what a great summer, and they were doing everything they could. They made 21 signings. Through 9 matches, 8 played, 9 match weeks, 8 played, they've conceded 21 goals. That's the most in the division, and a team gave up 9 in one match. We clowned on Bournemouth, and I was the leader in the clubhouse at pointing jokes at both the club, their supporters, and their manager. And to be fair, they're sitting on 9 points with 4 consecutive draws. And Forest is dead last right now as we speak, behind Leicester City. And honestly, as I look at it on paper, I would say Forest right now would be my betting favorite to finish rock bottom in this league. And it has everything to do with the bad decision that their board did to back them in the way that they did and set them up for what I believe is an unsustainable period in this league. 1 year, by the way, in this league.
Yeah, I'm not taking that bet. That shit doesn't even work in Football Manager, Bickler. When you sign so many guys, it never pans out. Bickler, who was your dud?
So my dud is Trent Arnold-Alexander. Hot topic, right? I'll go against the grain, not just because I'm a Liverpool supporter, because I just sincerely believe he is the best right back in England. He's not playing like it, though. And there's no way that you can make an argument for him right now above James. And even if you want to switch Trippier over to the other side, you could probably make the nod for him right now. I think he's so far inside of his own head right now. He lacks confidence. He played a part in the first 2 goals during the game. He struggled getting forward. 0 for 8 from crosses. I mean, when that's a big part of your game is creating chances and that's what you're hitting and you're not doing it defensively, you know, when your duel rate on the ground is hovering around 40%, just across the board, it was a really, really ugly performance at a moment where he needed it most. So he was my dud.
Yeah, that is a painful one to listen to, but so true, sadly. My dud is from Fulham, Chalobah. I mean, if you look at that game, and I hate to pick on a guy just because he got a red card, but the way you get a red card, how early in the game and how unnecessarily you get it in a totally, like, not dangerous, far away from the goal, unnecessary tackle that you know, even if you get the ball, is going to cause a lot of trouble. And I know Fulham is in decent shape right now after 8 weeks, but it's a long season, man, and you don't know what's going to happen. An injury to Mitrovic can put that team to being very, very basic. So these are games you need points from at home to Newcastle. And I think the moment that red card came out, I mean, it was going to be a tough game anyway, but I think the moment the red card came out, I think you could have guaranteed that Newcastle was going to run away with that. It was a matter of how much they were going to score. And obviously Newcastle dominated the rest of the game. So I am making my duds. Just a bad spot, a bad tackle, bad decision so goddamn early in the game. So he is my dud. Well, that's it for us this week. Next week's game of the week is our boys taking on Arsenal. I don't know if it's a matchup that us Liverpool fans are looking forward to, but it should be a good one. And hey, maybe it'll be a good time for the Reds to kind of redeem themselves. But we'll obviously keep an eye on every single game and kind of give our take. But it'll be our main focus match of the week will be Arsenal versus Liverpool. Have a great week, everybody.